let's stop here and throw it open for questions, comments. And please stand and try to keep them fairly brief, and we'll be glad to have people answer them.
I guess these two questions are for Mr. Elberg. Psychological emotional abuse is a very slippery topic, and it is often dismissed by people who subscribe to these tough love approaches. How legally have you found the challenge to be to meeting that burden of proof, to showing that there has been emotional and psychological abuse, particularly because it takes often months or years to manifest itself? And the second question is, has to do with dual diagnosis. Seems that a lot of the ambiguity between mental illness and addiction and the intersections between the two fields, which established professionals don't often agree on, is exploited by these programs. My own brother went to the Family Foundation School and suffers from schizoaffective disorder, taken off of his medications immediately upon entering, and without consultation with my parents. And it's my belief that all of the horrific stories that I've heard from him coming out of that program have led to the exacerbation and the full-blown manifestation of his mental illness. And now he's on a very strict medication regimen. He's okay, but he wasn't as bad as that before entering one of these programs. So the intersection between the two, if you could comment on that, that would be really helpful.
I'm not sure I'm the most qualified person to comment on the second question. There are people that know far more about the mental health issues than I do. With respect to the first question, in the kids' cases in New Jersey, I became consumed by learning the story in exquisite detail. When Nick spoke, he mentioned that it would take, I don't remember what he said, 3 hours or 3 days to describe all the ways in which kids manipulated and controlled people. That was true. It took me years to really, and I spent thousands of hours talking to victims and their families before I could tell the story. I was only able to do it because the abuse in that case was so grotesque and the kids were kept there for so long that I believed that economically I was going to be able to, it was going to pay. And I don't want to sound too cynical, but I would not have been able to do it and run my law firm if I didn't believe that as well. So that's the, and I believed if I just told people exactly what happened to kids on a day-to-day basis and how long kids were there, the jury would understand it and eventually the insurance companies would understand it. With respect to the second question and the question of diagnosis, it is my impression that the mental health field has done an awful job of keeping control of its language, and that it has allowed its, what should be its proprietary language, to be taken over by all kinds of other folks who use language, words that should be associated with the profession, to do things which have nothing to do with those words as they're used by professionals. So more often than not in these places, they use all kinds of words, but they don't use those words in the same way that professionals do. And finally, I would say that for many people that send kids to these facilities, you made a reference to your brother and medication. Many kids are sent because the diagnosis their parents are given are diagnoses that are very difficult for parents to live with. And the consequences for those diagnoses and the long-term consequences and how long it takes for anything good to happen, parents can't handle, and these programs offer simpler solutions with the additional benefit of a little bit of a period of separation. And so, and I think that's an underappreciated part of this, of the whole picture.
I have to say too that the substance abuse field and the mental health field are separate, unfortunately. And so the substance field is unfortunately populated with a lot of people whose only experience is, I went through a 12-step program and I trained in a 12-step program and now I know what to do for bipolar, depression, schizophrenia, everything like that, because I know that the 12 steps treated my heroin problem. So that's a problem. And slowly the fields are coming together more, but the substance abuse field is where this idea that abuse is treatment comes from. And those fields need to be integrated better, and people need to demand evidence-based treatment. The only way it's going to change is if people say, you know what, having the disease of addiction doesn't qualify you to treat it any more than having the disease of cancer qualifies you to treat that.
Not to belabor this, but on the Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health, on the National Organization's website, there is a document called Blamed and Ashamed. It was done a number of years ago. It was interviewing young people with both mental health and substance abuse problems. And young people did focus groups across the country to interview the young people that had those two issues, mental health and substance abuse problems. And then they analyzed the data, the young people did, and in fact, Trina Osher, who's here, did the actual writing of that document, and it's on the Federation's website. The young people made, I felt like, some of the most outstanding recommendations about what they thought needed to happen, and their recognition of the division between mental health and substance abuse, just incredible. So go to the website, it's there, free, download it. The National Federation of, Blamed and Ashamed.